This is part of science. So we have learned something. Okay, it's experimentation time, and we may have gone completely mad. I have more cardboard boxes to get rid of, and we're going to do penetration testing yet again. Last time we focused more on straight double-edged swords, and we were doing kind of two-handed half-swording techniques. This time I'm going to be focusing on single-handed swords, and I'm going to try and put some more curved blades in there. This is not particularly scientific. Disclaimers to follow. We will start off with the Winter Cutlery Ljubljana Messer. And that basically offered no resistance at all, and it way overshot my last mark, so we went to 24 centimeters. That was going in the direction of the grain. Just out of curiosity, I'm going to go against the grain. Basically the same. Yep. So either way, we're exceeding 23, 24 centimeters going all the way through. Nice showing from the Messer. Next up, Swordier Falchion with this wicked clip point. Also exceeded all measures. Okay, they're going too deep. I will try one thrust with each sword, but I think that unfortunately the swords, this box isn't offering enough resistance, so I will probably need to get a stronger box. Now, this is the only one that I'm not sure about. This is a Shuang Dao, and unfortunately, my example is quite flexible. So even though it's very, very sharp, it's possible that if I don't start the force with a cut, that there won't be enough resistance in the blade to push all the way through. Let's see what happens. Nope. It was so sharp, it just went all the way through, and again, 25 centimeters. Okay, so the first round of testing showed that because the edge was so sharp, I was gauging how deep I wanted to penetrate based on not trying to hit this stopping block in the back, which puts my penetration depth at between 23 and 26 centimeters, and basically all of the swords went to that depth. So I was using enough force in my thrust not only to break the surface of this box, there's some stuffing, there's some insulation on the inside of it, and that was enough that it just sailed all the way through, and this didn't offer enough resistance, both for the amount of force I was offering and the type of swords that we had. So this wasn't a tough enough target for the type of testing I was doing. This is part of science. So we have learned something. We need to adjust the gain on the experiment. Let's start by putting something else in front of the box and give it a couple more stabs. Let's see if we can see if any difference pops out. Okay, we're back to the first sword. I now have a second layer of cardboard. It's not super stable, but I think it'll do. Let me just put something there to anchor it. There we go. All right, second layer of cardboard. This is tougher cardboard than the grade that I was using before. Again, there's no one standard grade of cardboard, which is why I don't actually like it as a cutting medium. And just as before, I'm going to try and shoot to the same level of strength and depth, I'm going to hit the box in the back as well, so there should be more resistance on my target. Let's see what happens. Aha! Now we're stopping. Okay, so the Ljubljana Messer got to 17 centimeters of penetration. Now we have the right calibration to actually be able to test things now. The wavy Katzbalger. The wavy Katzbalger went to 20 centimeters of penetration. I'll do it one more time, and this time I want to do it against the grain to see if that makes any difference. It seems to. Yeah, it definitely did. So fighting, instead of going in between the different slats, so it's fighting against all the corrugation, and it made it to 17 centimeters of penetration sideways. Interesting. The Ming discard cutting Jian from Chen. Nope, that one blew past everything. Yeah, that one overshot, so that one was 24 centimeters. So this one is by far the furthest. I'll try it sideways, see if that makes a difference. Oop, went too high. So in going high, in going sideways, it's definitely more resistive. And based on that, I've wiped off all of my marks, unfortunately. But it looks like we only got to, I'm going to have to measure that, 22 centimeters, so very slightly less. Falchion time! Nope, that one went powerfully through. So that one made it through 23.5 centimeters. Very powerful display from the Falchion. Hussar Sabre. That one seems to have gone pretty deep. Despite the fact that it's quite stout, its curved belly, I think, is helping it go through. 26 centimeters. Quite the showing from the Hussar Sabre. Look at that. And the wavy but very sharp Shuang Niu Wei Dao from Chen. Yeah, so this one, because it's cutting so effectively, it is rocketing all the way through the cardboard. So that one made it to 24 centimeters. That's pretty good. I was expecting it to do less, given how flexible it is. And the Kilij from Pesery Handicraft. Oh my. That's far. I think we have a winner. Where did it go to? Right there? Yeah, it went right there. "28 centimeters. So for this particular example, these two, which are reasonably stout and narrow, perform the highest, which is perhaps counterintuitive, but I've detected that before. In previous drop testing, the Kilij actually outperformed many of the kind of straight and double-edged types of swords when you have this kind of consistent medium where you're trying to slice all the way through. So perhaps the curve, because it's still quite pointy. If you take a look at it, between these two, the Kilij is still a narrower, pointier tip, but at the same time, it also has the slicing action of the curved blade. And so the fact that the Yelman is there to reinforce the end so that you don't have the fineness that you get in a traditional saber, this is a very potent thrusting design, which is something that I don't think everyone thinks of when they think about the flared Yelman that is usually associated with cutting in sabers. Very interesting. Let's try one more different configuration. Okay, for this last experiment, I'm going to be using some strips of rug padding that I have. They have a rubberized portion and then this, I'm not even sure what it's made of. It's some sort of synthetic material that's been spun and is very cushiony. So this should be much more resistant and similar to, this is not meant to be analogous to anything, but it should be similar to going through layers of textile, something like gambeson, especially if I were to wrap it up. I'm just going to do a single layer initially because I want to get several swords through it. So let's see what happens. Ljubljana. Nope. No difference. Falchion. Now that's interesting. See what happened there is it failed to pierce the tip, dug into the rubber. It failed to pierce it, but there was so much force behind the falchion tip that it blew out the cardboard behind it. So this landed with a percussive action because I was still striking very hard. So this falchion tip, and if I touch it, it is still very, very sharp. But for whatever reason, the geometry of this falchion tip compared to the winter cutlery Ljubljana Messer, even though you might intuitively think that this is sharper or finer or pointier than this, for whatever reason, when I went to strike it, the Swordier falchion did not manage to find purchase and slice through the rubber in the same way that the Messer did. And so it hit, and it hurt. Like, if you got stabbed by that, it would hurt. But the armor did the job that the armor, quote-unquote, the textile armor, was supposed to. And it prevented the sword from slicing in. And that's all you need to do, because as soon as you retard the edge of the sword turns into a percussive weapon. And compared to something like an axe or a mace or a hammer, a sword does not transmit the energy nearly as well. I still would not want to get hit by the tip of a sword going in like this, even if it were blunt. That would be a terrible day. But it is nowhere near as devastating as having 20 centimeters of cold steel slid straight through the body and out the back. So kudos to the armor. The armor did what it's supposed to, and you can see I'm hitting with a decent amount of force, even when the armor protected us from the falchion. It blew out the box. I'm going to try one more stab just to see if I can get it to go through the armor, but then I'll give up on the falchion. Nope, same thing. Just like before, it dug in, it caught, and it pulled on it, and it dragged the armor into the box. That is really cool and interesting. I never would have guessed that. Well, I might not have the opportunity to get as many tests as I thought with this because my poor box is going to start getting destroyed. I have a second box, so Let's see how many we can still do. Katzbalger. This is a very sharp tip. Again, so if I just have the cardboard here and I just push on it, it'll just slide straight through paper. So the tip, even though it's round and spatulate, is quite sharp. Let's see what it does against the rubber. Nope. The rubber armor is protecting us. So far, only Eric Estlund has been able to defeat the rubber armor. Very interesting. Now, for something significantly less stiff. So this is the stiffest sword that I have. This is the least stiff. This one comes in at, I don't know, probably 15 kilograms of stiffness, maybe 18. This one comes in at 2 or 3 kilograms of stiffness. Predictions. Very sharp, but not very stiff. There's not a lot of resistance back there. Poor box. Let's see what happens. Will sharpness make the difference? Yes! We needed to slice through. So even though this wasn't a stiff sword, because I'm going against the type of armor, the nature of the armor, the keenness of the edge is what was important. So this is the classic example, because look, I can take this sword and put it on the edge of my cardboard here, and look what happens to it. This is worse than the machete as far as how flexible it is. So when it comes to penetration testing, as always, the medium you're using is vitally important to giving you information about what you're actually testing. This is shown to be very resistive armor and can stand up to a ton of punishment, to the point that we're blowing out the cardboard in the back during my thrust. However, a lot of people think that the only thing that matters when it comes to offering a good thrust is how stiff your blade is. That is especially true if you're going up against a very highly resistive target, such as chainmail that you're trying to go through, such as plates that you have to skip around and then sneak into the gaps. But even against these kind of thick textiles, if you have an edge that is able to slice through the textiles and then make it through, floppy edge can still do it. Something to keep in mind. We need more penetration testing. Everyone get out there. Start thrust testing. Hussar Sabre. Nope. Was not able to go through, and once again, blew out the back. So this is plenty, actually, to be honest, now that I'm touching it, the tip is not super duper sharp. The point is, and in fact, knowing that, let me try something a little silly. Nope, even with the sharp point, I wasn't able to get it to pierce all the way through. There's too much resistance here. So the very tippy tip has an incredibly sharp point, but thereafter, the edges right here, they're sharp, but they're not razor sharp. And apparently that's enough to make the difference. What does that mean? What does that mean for the Kilij? The Kilij is sharp at the tip, and it's reasonably pointy. Let's find out. Running out of box space. Here, we'll turn it around on the other side. Nope. Kilij didn't make it through, and it broke our box. And the Ming, discard Jian. Somehow I left that out of the running. I predict this will make it through. I think it has a very sharp tip. Huh, look at that. We didn't make it. Nope. Both times did not make it all the way through. This is a tricky one to wrap up. The Winter Cutlery Messer and the Shuang Dao Oxtail were the only two that were able to have significant success against the kind of reinforced padding, which suggests that their tips, either the narrowness of their tips, the sharpness, or some combination thereof, was the best for that type of material when it comes to thrusting. Notice that they're both rather broad. Almost all of the other swords we tested were significantly more narrow when it came to the tips. And usually we think of narrowness as being better when it comes to thrusting. However, with textile usually seems more about you have to slice through multiple layers of fiber in order to get all the way through. If you just try and push, the fibers act like a net and catch whatever you're trying to get through. There are cases, again, of arrows being caught through layers and layers of fiber, arrowheads. Things like silk can be very resistive to it. So that may or may not be why falchions were popular in a time when people weren't wearing heavy layers of plate armor, but when things like padded gambeson were very popular. If you have big cleaving swords, that can help get you through layers and layers of textile. So very interesting. This definitely warrants additional research, but right now you can see that the ability to gauge the thrusting power of a sword is not simple, and it is definitely not just due to how stiff a blade is. How stiff a blade is may help you communicate the energy into the tip, but what's going on in the tip geometry seems to have a lot more to do with how deep the sword is going to go and how well it's going to interact with that medium and get through it, whether it's through piercing or slicing or cutting. All right, hope you guys found this interesting. Until next time, take care.